At the UN General Assembly that started while I'm filming this, the USA and the Europeans want to explore new negotiations with Iran in the nuclear dispute. But it's not just this question that's problematic. Actually, October 18th was supposed to bring an end to all EU sanctions that still exist because of the nuclear dispute. This is what the nuclear agreement from 2015 stipulates, to which the European participants Germany, France and Great Britain, the so-called E3, have so far adhered. But that will not happen, as the foreign ministers of the three countries announced on Thursday in a joint letter to EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell, who acts as coordinator of the agreement. This means that the Revolutionary Guard remains subject to far-reaching sanctions from the European Union. According to German media, Federal Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, her French colleague Catherine Colonna, and the Briton James Cleverly refer in the letter to the fact that Iran has been violating its obligations under the agreement, which sets strict limits on its nuclear program for more than 3 years. Iran is not complying with restrictions on the amount of enriched uranium or the level of enrichment, and is developing new centrifuges. The ministers say it is particularly worrying that the inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, found particles that were enriched to more than 83% of the fissile isotope uranium-235. 90% is considered necessary for use in nuclear weapons. The response to the Iranian violations was serious but appropriate, it said. Iran rejected 2 offers that had already been negotiated, with which all parties would have returned to the agreement. The 2015 nuclear deal calls for some sanctions to expire on October 18th. However, the decision to maintain sanctions was in line with the rules of the JCPOA, the statement said, as Iran is not abiding by the agreement and has twice missed an opportunity to revive it. The ministries reiterated their intention to find a diplomatic solution. The nuclear deal with Iran was negotiated in 2015 under then US President Barack Obama, with the participation of China, Russia, France, Great Britain and Germany. It was intended to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. The so-called Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, stipulates that Iran limits its nuclear activities and in return benefits from an easing of international sanctions. Under President Donald Trump, the USA withdrew from the agreement in May 2018 and imposed unilateral sanctions against the regime in Tehran. As a result, Iran also moved further and further away from compliance. The decision came a few days before the start of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. There, the 3 European states and the United States want to explore the prospects for new negotiations with the government of hardliner Ebrahim Raisi. According to reports, there will be a meeting between the Europeans and the Iranian nuclear negotiator Ali Bagheri Khani. High-ranking diplomats are cautious about the prospect of progress on the nuclear issue. Iran recently agreed on a prisoner exchange with the USA, which is about to be implemented. To free 5 US nationals, President Joe Biden's administration has released more than $6 billion in oil deals that were frozen in accounts in South Korea. The money will flow through Qatar, which mediated, and will only be available for humanitarian purposes. This would improve the prospects for progress on other disputes. In the spring, tensions had risen dangerously. The US had made it clear to Iran that it would no longer tolerate further attacks on US facilities in the Middle East by Tehran-controlled militias or attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz, and increased its troops in the Gulf region. And the Europeans also threatened far-reaching consequences if the regime escalated the nuclear dispute. They warned Tehran against raising enrichment levels to weapons-grade levels. Oman mediated on this issue, and according to the IAEA, Iran has recently slowed but not stopped the production of uranium enriched to 60%. However, there were no improvements in cooperation with the IAEA. And in addition, Western diplomats accuse Iran of continuing to systematically arrest foreigners and dual nationals under pretexts and holding them hostage. Most recently, the case of a Swedish EU diplomat became known. The cases stand in the way of rapprochement, and Minister Baerbock called on Iran's Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian to release 2 German dual nationals who are being held there. As the German Foreign Office announced, she telephoned her Iranian colleague on last Wednesday during her trip to the USA, the first time since a meeting in February 22 at the security conference in Munich. It was an open, but it was also a very direct and clear conversation, said Baerbock, without giving details. The German-Iranian architect Nahid Tagawi was arrested by the Revolutionary Guards in October 2020. Tagawi had campaigned for women's rights. The regime's judiciary officially convicted her of propaganda against the state. That's a vague offense that is regularly used against critics. And the German-Iranian Yamshid Sharmat was kidnapped from Dubai to Iran by the Iranian Secret Service in 2020 and sentenced to death by a revolutionary court on terror charges. He belongs to a monarchist group but denies being responsible for an attack in Iran that the regime blames on him. The Supreme Court confirmed the death sentence. The federal government is trying to prevent enforcement. Iran has signaled that it is interested in improving relations with Germany. However, the federal government sees progress in consular cases as a necessary first step. The human rights situation in Iran is also likely to play a role there. Because September 16th marked the anniversary of the death of Gina Mahsa Amini, who was so badly mistreated at a police station in Tehran that she died. The so-called morality police had arrested her because she was allegedly not wearing her headscarf properly. The 22-year-old's death sparked nationwide protests in Iran, which the regime suppressed with violence. On the anniversary, new protests challenged the hardliner regime, which recently tightened headscarf regulation and their monitoring. Baerbock had organized a majority in the UN Human Rights Council to appoint a special rapporteur to document human rights violations, especially against women and minors, in the course of the suppression of the protests. Tehran was very angry about this and sharply attacked the federal government and Baerbock personally. And if you want to see another video, the next one is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.